And another UFC fight night has been in the books. Can't wait to talk about some hard-hitting men in one of the hardest-hitting sports that is out there right now. Hit that intro. Hey everybody and welcome. This is the Commotion and I'm Roshan Joshi here with Dan Smith. How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing good, man. A lot of really good fights last night. I'm interested to get into it.
Love it. This is the Commotion, and we are on the Sports Den with Dan. But before we move on, make sure to hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, and for any new content that we have coming out, hit that notification bell. It really helps us out. And if you like any of the music, check out Be the Human. His info is in the description below. All right, buddy. So really looking forward to this one. I love my fights, as so do you. And we had a great one with UFC Fight Night Apex at Austin. So UFC Fight Night with Poirier and Hooker versus Hooker.
Yeah, so I was really interested in this one because this has a lot of connotations for the eventual lightweight belt and how that's going to kind of play out in the near future. So obviously you have Khabib and Gaethje in that division, and they're going to be fighting for the belt next, and more than likely. It hasn't been booked, I don't think, but we all know that's what's going to happen. So Dustin Poirier obviously just came off a title loss, interim title loss, and then Dan the Hangman Hooker was kind of in that mix too. So if Dan the Hangman Hooker or Dustin Poirier, whoever won this fight, that's probably going to be your next number one contender for the winner of Gaethje Khabib. So this was a huge fight. I was actually a little surprised it was on a fight night. I thought it could have been on a pay-per-view because of how big, the ripple effect.
The names were absolutely. Yeah. And then the other co-main event, before we even go too much into the fight analytics and the breakdown, the other co-main event was also a banger with Platinum Perry and Mickey Gall.
Yeah, so, both of these guys, I mean, they're not really, they are who they are in their division, and Perry's talking a lot about moving up to 185 and fighting Darren Till, so that's probably where you're going to see him next. But just the thing about Platinum Mike Perry, number one, he is just an authentic human, and you have to just, if nothing else, be entertained by him.
The man does keep it real.
Oh my God, dude, 100%. And we were talking before, and I said he's just like the Diaz brothers, where like if it wasn't for professional fighting, he would 100% be a career criminal and like just like fighting in the streets. A lot of those Florida guys, man, they're like that. Jorge Masvidal's another one. But the thing about this, man, is he kind of pulled a move and fired everybody. He fired his coaches, he fired his trainers. He wasn't a fan of anybody on his team. He just left them all and just had his girlfriend hold pads for him.
I'm glad you brought that up. And this is even pre-fight analytic right here. Before this man decided to go into the cage instead of like a regular person going with their whole team, their coaches, their cut men, the whole nine, my man said, nope, we're starting fresh, we're starting anew. Wipes out his team mid-career, which we never hear of, and moves over to have his girlfriend hold his pads for him. And I think he only had like 2 sparring sessions or something like that before the fight.
Yeah, I mean, people have jumped camps. You'll see that quite often where people will change their camps. Either trying to restart their career, or sometimes you see it whenever a champion loses his belt, he'll get into a new camp to kind of get a new look, get a fresh look at things, get fresh eyes on things. But I've never heard of a guy just being straight up like, nope, I'm out. And
keeping it in the family.
Yeah, and I have a sneaking suspicion, only because of his post-fight interview that he was talking about he has some tax problems, that he might have fired everybody because he needed as much money as possible to pay off his debts to Uncle Sam. So that's just my own little conspiracy theory on it, but it could be real.
No, that's a very valid thought process. I'm with it.
He was immediately talking about getting into a camp and finding a new camp and finding new trainers and getting in with Yoel Romero so he could feel that 185 power. So that's just my own little thing where it might be a little bit of money problems, which is why he got rid of everybody. But listen, man, at the end of the day, he got the W. So
love it. So yeah, even just going right into that fight. And right before we go into that fight, we're going to hit the tail of the tape, which is just their measurables. So Mike Perry coming in at 171, 71-inch reach, stance is orthodox, and his opponent is Mickey Gall, 170 pounds with a 74-inch reach and a switch stance. So he likes to fight in that stance. So me personally, big fan of Mickey Gall, big fan of Platinum Mike Perry. So you saw that right in the beginning, they just started banging a little bit. Perry was throwing these really heavy combinations, these really heavy right hands right off the bat, and then throwing some good, strong leg kicks too.
The thing about Mike Perry is twofold, and he will live and die on these two things in every fight that he has. The man can take a lot of punishment. I remember the last fight that he had where his nose was literally just like right of his face, like it was like smushed over, and he kept coming. So that's number one, is he knows he can take punches. He knows he can walk through people's power. I'm interested to see him at 185 to see if that translates, but at 170, he can walk through power. And on the other side of it, his second thing is he has power. He has true knockout power. He's really strong. He's compact. He knows how to throw his punches. And Mickey Gall's not a known striker. Mickey Gall is a ground guy. He's known to be a black belt. He's a ground guy. So I don't think that Mike Perry was really worried or concerned about Mickey Gall's power, and was literally, because he was giving up a little bit of a height disadvantage, I believe. And he was just walking through some shots, some jabs, and just looking for that right hand to end the fight. So
he was hunting,
yes,
which was very interesting. I mean, Mickey Gall usually looks good, and Gall did have his points where he was looking good. He was throwing some good counters. He did have some flashes, but
his movement was really well.
Yes, sir. But the thing is, I just think Perry outclassed him in power as well. So when they were getting like when they're getting nice and close into the clinch and stuff like that, I think Gall even like pressed Perry against the cage at one point, and Perry just picks him up for this big slam.
Yeah.
And it was just like a grown man tossing around a little boy.
Yeah, that's actually something that surprised me, is how well Platinum Mike Perry controlled Mickey Gall on the ground.
Well, that's something I wanted to talk about too. So he controlled him on the ground for about 4 minutes, which is nuts. And then to top it off with the dominant grappling, and dominant wrestling too. Like, I was watching transitions and stuff of when he was transitioning. He was throwing in like a half Nelson and stuff, real basic wrestling stuff. But he was looking good, not only standing but on the ground too.
Yeah, Mickey Gall, who is on paper more of an accomplished ground guy than Platinum Mike Perry is, he only had control on the ground for under a minute, about 50 seconds. So Mike Perry dominated on the ground, he dominated on the feet, and that's going to lead to a decision every time.
And which is so funny because, as you said, like, he is a dominant ground guy, Gall. He did not make any of his takedown attempts. He had like 6 takedown attempts. He missed all of them. Which is interesting. Gall's been fighting in the game for so long that you kind of think he's an old guy, but he's not. He's still a pretty young buck. He just started fighting real young.
Well, the thing is with takedown attempts is that you can't shoot them naked. So
you got to set them up.
Set up takedown attempts. And when Mike Perry isn't concerned with getting knocked out, when that's not a fear for him, he's not going to be worried about hands as much. He is going to be worried about the takedown offense, because that's where Mickey Gall's strength is. So he can stuff all 6 of those because he's not worried about getting knocked out. Once you remove an entire aspect of somebody else's game, whether it be through dismantling it or through just not being concerned about it, and you focus all of your energies on that one thing that person does very well, that makes it very, very hard for that thing to be accomplished. So I think it goes back to, again, like I said, Mike Perry knows he has a chin. He knows he can take an anvil to the face and keep moving forward. So Mickey Gall does not have anvils. So that's kind of where it went. Is Mickey Gall's kind of one weapon was getting Mike to the ground, getting that top control, and hopefully trying to submit him. And Mike just didn't let it happen.
And the other thing about Perry is, and as you said, like, he's the type of guy who knows his strengths, which is having an anvil for a chin and being able to walk through punches and be able to start delivering his own. And in that deliverance, my man sent out 158 punches and he landed 103 of them.
Yeah.
Mickey Gall sent out about 111 punches and only landed 59 of them. Yeah. So that damage you just see just start building up throughout the whole entire fight.
The turning point in the fight, in my opinion, when Mickey Gall was like, oh man, I'm in trouble, was, I believe, in the second round when Platinum Mike Perry threw an overhand right, and Mickey Gall kind of turned away from a little bit and gave up the back of his head, and right behind this ear, right behind your ear, if you get hit there, it's going to mess with your inner ear. It's going to mess with the water in there. Your
equilibrium. Yep.
And that's going to send you to the canvas every time, and that's exactly what happened. So Mickey Gall took a hard shot right behind the ear, and it just dropped him to the canvas. And his eyes were wide. And I'll give him credit, man. He fought out of it. He fought through it, and he, ended up going to a decision. He ended up going to the judges. But I think that was the point when Mickey Gall knew, like, oh man, I don't think I'm winning this fight.
Yeah, oh, for sure. So that was like around the second round when Platinum Perry dropped him. So after he dropped him, you're right. You saw the degradation in his game, and honestly, in my opinion, the only reason that Mickey Gall survived that fight was because of the bell on that second round. Because as soon as Perry dropped him, he got that dominant position, and he was just dominating on top. He was looking for that finish.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everybody's always looking for a finish. That's nobody ever wants to leave it in the judges' hands, because I mean, even the what was the there was a score that was ridiculous. It was like a 10-8 round in one of the fights. It might have been the Dan Hooker fight. I'm not sure, but it was just a ridiculous score by the judges to call it a 10-8 round, whomever the fight was. And that's the thing, is that you don't always want to leave it in the judges' hands. You want to finish the fight, whether it be through submission or knockout. Take that decision out of the judges' hands and do your job. Every time you go to the judges, you never know. You really never know. And I get blown away repeatedly. And at this point, it's my fault that I get surprised by some of the judging that happens, in mixed martial arts and boxing, but that's a different story.
Oh, well, that's
yeah. So at this point, it's my fault. I should not be surprised anymore, but I still get surprised.
We are all a fan. I mean, we are all. We have all done it. Unfortunately, our eyes and our brains sometimes work on their own. Yeah. And sometimes we realize when other people's don't work. And that happens a lot within not only UFC judging, but especially boxing judging, because of the massive amount of corruption that goes on there as well. But that is a story for another day. Maybe a reality rants. I'll go into the corruption of boxing. But that is another day. But
I was going to say, so Mike Perry got the W. Good for him. I'm curious to see him versus Darren Till, because I truly believe that's going to be the next one.
I love Darren Till, man. He's a freaking gorilla. My man screaming, everybody's getting it, and he meant it. He's the only guy that I know that said, hey, I do not want a title shot because I don't deserve it. There are way too many people in this weight class that I got to beat the crap out of first.
Yeah, and then he changed weight classes.
Yeah, I remember that too. But that'll be exciting. That'll be a good one. And I'm looking forward to that as well. And we will be having coverage on that as well. Absolutely. But for the meantime, we're going to hit that next main event between Poirier versus Hooker. So in the tail of the tape for this fight, you had Dustin the Diamond Poirier, who is 31 years old, height's around 5'9". His reach is 72 inches, and he is fighting in an orthodox stance. And he was fighting Dan the Hangman Hooker out of New Zealand, who's 30 years old as well. He's about 6 feet tall with a 75-inch reach, and both orthodox fighters fighting out of the lightweight division.
Yeah. So In preparing for this fight, I guess I should say preparing and watching for this fight, a couple things that I expected that I did not see. First and foremost is Dan Hooker is kind of really known for a lead left hook. He's really, really good at finding a home for his lead left hook. And also his work in the clinch and his knees. He has really strong, powerful knees. He's kind of on the taller side for his division. 6 foot is a little bit taller for that division. I mean, he had 3 inches on Poirier. And he does a lot of damage with those knees to the face in the clinch. And, you know, obviously we'll get into it later, but kind of synopsis, he lost this fight in the clinch. That's what lost him this fight. There's some other mitigating factors and some other things that peppered in, but at the end of the day, that's how he lost this fight, is the clinch. Although I did have him winning the first 2 rounds. So.
As many of you guys will find out as you continue this journey with Dan and myself, we have a very strong appreciation for a strong clinch game and strong kicks to the legs and body kicks. If you can hack people down in a more technical way, we love it.
Yeah. It's the same thing and like kind of like mirroring boxing again, but everybody loves the knockouts. Everybody loves going for the head. It's like, you know, it's stylish. It's, you know, you can see the sweat, you know, the neck snap, you hear it, all that stuff. But it's a much more effective method to go for the body.
Oh yeah.
In UFC, it's much more effective to go for the legs and kind of take away that base. If you break down the base, then you can really, it opens up a world of other things. And one thing that was really, really impressive to me was Dan the Hangman Hooker started doing that in the first and a little bit into the second round. He was doing this inside calf kick to Dustin Poirier. And it was really effective. And you saw a couple times Dustin Poirier wince on it. And what that does is you don't want to open up your stance now. So if you're getting your legs chopped down, especially to the inside of those legs, because they don't get tempered as much as the outside do.
The more you widen your stance, the more of an opening you have to hit that inside leg kick.
Exactly. And so if you don't want to get leg kicked on the inside, you're going to tighten your stance up. When you tighten your stance up, you lose power in your punches. So a way to gain more power in your punches is to open up your stance and really drive into it. Have your center of gravity really, really wide, grind those hips, grind that foot down, and load that punch up. So the best way to take that away is to break down the legs. And that's what the Hangman was doing.
Which he was doing, and that's one of those things where it's like you see it in the beginning, and this happens all the time. You see it in the beginning, you see a wonderful game plan starting to get executed, and then they get hit really hard, and they forget their game plan.
I'll tell you what, man. So this is a beautiful example, this fight right here, of what if you watch Dustin Poirier, of recognizing what your opponent is trying to do to you, adjusting your game plan, and changing up to take advantage of some weaknesses that your opponent is showing. Because Dan Hooker, he had 23 leg strikes in the fight, landing 21 of them. Dustin Poirier landed 2. Through 2. So you could tell who was going for the legs and who was trying to chop down the tree.
Which is crazy because Poirier is known for having these diamond shins that just rip through people. And yeah, he only had like 2 leg kicks in the beginning.
He has hard kicks, man. And the first thing I noticed in this fight was that Poirier opened up in a southpaw stance, which I thought was really, really interesting. And it did expose him to those inside calf kicks. Because like you said before, he's an orthodox fighter. So the majority of his fights, he fights orthodox. Now he does switch, but majority he's orthodox. So he opened up his southpaw. So his right leg now is his lead leg. And that inside calf is what's getting chewed up, right? The reason why I think he did that was to protect against these lead hooks. So Dan Hooker throws these lead left hooks. And what Poirier was doing, because now his right arm is his lead arm, is when he was blocking, he was flaring his elbow up. You'll notice that, right? So this is a pretty good effective method of blocking those hooks, because even if you do this, right, that side is still open to catch a shot. Doing this, you kind of block everything. So I think that's why he took that southpaw stance. But Dan Hooker, being a professional and being good at his job, started taking that inside leg kick, which was really bothering Poirier. So what Poirier started doing, and you'll notice this, he did it, the first time he did it was at the end of the first round, is he started stepping through on his punches, right? So normally you'll shuffle forward. So your feet will move kind of in tandem to close that distance.
But he's closing the gap with each strike.
Right. And then what happens is, though, is that it's a little slow and it's a little choppy. And that allows Dan Hooker to back up, use his jab, which he was using really effectively, and land that inside leg kick, which he was hitting really, really effectively. So what Dustin Poirier started doing was, instead of kind of working in tandem with his feet, he started stepping through with his feet, right? And throwing shots straight down the center. And that was really, really hurting Dan Hooker, because he has a tendency to lower his hands. So at the end of the first round, Dustin Poirier did that for the first time. I'm talking like 10 seconds left. And that was one of the adjustments that he made through the rest of the fight, was stepping through on his punches and throwing them straight down the pipe to close that distance faster so that Hooker couldn't react.
So yeah, a couple of things that I wanted to actually bring up that you just talked about was in the beginning when they altered the game plan. So it was kind of see the scope, adapt, and then exchange. So I love that. Analyze, adapt, exchange, and exchange your game plan for a different game plan. So I love that. Another thing that I thought was really interesting in that first round, as you said, Hooker is known for those clinches, but you saw Dustin have that that dominance within the clinch game, which was very interesting to see, because you're seeing the strength of somebody else and they're getting wiped out with it. Something I thought was really, really cool, and I hope you caught this as well, was the clinch double chop to the neck. That was amazing. I love that.
So I don't, again, this is my analysis, and I will never claim to know more than these guys or anything like that, but I have done some corner work. I've trained for a long time. Like I know a little bit of what I'm talking about here. And I don't think it was necessarily Poirier dominating the clinch as much as it was Dan Hooker getting lazy in the clinch.
Okay.
So the biggest thing in the clinch is to protect your jaw, right? And you want to do that by kind of shrugging your shoulders up and getting your hands up high and, you know, messing with people that way and so on and so forth. If you notice, whenever Dan Hooker closed the gap and whenever they were close, his hands dropped to his sides, almost like a Rock'em Sock'em Robots pose.
Yeah, it's like, here, come at me.
He was just rifling off at the body because he likes body shots. He likes hunting for the liver. So he's rifling off at the body. That left his head and jaw completely exposed to get hooked, to get elbowed, and those, you know, weird hammer fist kind
it
of
was interesting. He went pop, and he caught him like on the jawline, and then he caught him on the neck, and it was some kung fu kid there.
Like if you watch throughout the whole fight, that's why I said at the beginning, Dan Hooker lost this fight in the clinch, because every time he went to the clinch, he's throwing from the body, he's dropping his hands, and he's hunting for that liver, and he's hunting for that body strikes, and he just completely exposed himself. And I would venture to say 90% of the damage that he took in this fight was from that vulnerable position of lowering his hands, dropping his shoulders, and getting teed off on in the clinch. Hooks, elbows in the clinch is what really, really hurt him in this fight.
But yeah, man, going right into it, by the time round 2 was kicking off, Hooker had Poirier against the cage for a little bit, but Poirier kind of passes, gets his first punch in. You're seeing like kind of battle damage from both guys at this point. They're kind of both bleeding from the eyes, and they're both exchanging in the pocket a lot. I mean, these guys are brawling at this point. It was a good fight. They were really hammering at each other. And then you kind of see Dustin kind of go for some subs in there. And the one thing I really liked about his style was he was bypassing the first attack, whether it be a kick or a punch, because he's the smaller guy. He would bypass that first attack or kind of shrug it through or kind of slip through if he can, and then start attacking on the inside. And then you would see it again. He'd get through, attack on the inside.
Yeah, and again, that was the step through that I'm talking about. Yep. So at the beginning, in the first round, Dan Hooker was using his range really, really well, using what Dustin was giving him, taking that. Once Dustin Poirier, at the end of the first round, and you saw it a ton more in the second round, started stepping through on his punches, it closed the gap so much faster and allowed him to land some heavy, heavy shots. And he really started exposing Hooker in the second round with this adjustment that he made to his game plan. The one thing I will say, though, is that Dustin Poirier got saved by the bell 100% at the end of round 2 because Dan Hooker hit him with a really nasty knee in the clinch, again, to the head, to the face. And you even saw Dustin Poirier, once the round got called, he kind of put his hands on his knees and dropped his head down. And I think that could have been the fight. If that happened 30 seconds earlier, that might have been the fight right there. Which is insane because, as you were saying, like, if he was potentially not being lazy in the clinch and dominated in the clinch, there is your taste of victory. There was your taste of victory right there. Yo, if I would just keep on this game plan, I got 3 more rounds. Let me stay on this game plan. It's working. I got longer legs than he does. Let me get inside. Let me get on top. And let me just start throwing those knees real high. If I was cornering Dan Hooker, that would have been my main advice. You need to, number one, protect yourself in the clinch. Stop going for the body with your hands. Throw your knees. Control his head, control his posture, throw your knees. Eventually, he's going to get tired. And even if it takes round 3 or round 4 or even championship round 5, at some point, he's going to get lazy. He's going to get tired. His hands are going to drop, and you're going to
ice him.
That's going to be your knockout done. A knee to the face was how Dan Hooker was going to win this fight, and he had it in his grasp, and he let it go.
Absolutely agreed. Real quick, before we start wrapping this up, though, Fight Island.
Yes.
So that is going to be some very fun, interesting stuff coming up for us soon. I can't. I haven't yet. I know it's in Dubai. I saw the
Abu Dhabi.
Abu Dhabi. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I saw that it was I saw the external pictures. I know they have. I know that they have an internal area where you can fight inside, but then they also have an octagon outside on the beach.
So I don't know. So for those watching, we're from the Metro New York area, and there's a concert venue out in Long Island called Jones Beach. You ever been out there?
Yeah, it's really nice.
So it's awesome. So it's stadium seating. And you have the concert stage, and it's completely on the water. It's on the Long Island Sound, so you can see everything. The whole backdrop is water and sunsets. And all. It's an amazing venue. I think that Fight Island is going to be very, very similar to that in terms of you're going to have maybe stadium seating on one side, the octagon, and then it's all just like sunset and sand and ocean behind it. And I think it's going to be breathtaking, man. That might be a trip that you and I are going to have to take one day.
100%. Absolutely. So we can do some live coverage.
Yep.
I already know what's up, man.
So before we wrap this up, I just want to say one thing about Hangman and Poirier. I think that this fight was won in the 5th round. I also think that Dan Hooker was so beat up in the face that he was doing everything he could to abandon the striking game and just get Poirier on the ground. If you remember the Gaethje-Ferguson fight, Ferguson was just so beat up in the nose area. What actually ended that fight was a simple jab. It was a really stiff jab, but it hit him right on the button. And you see Ferguson could take the shot, walk away, hands dropped, and he just slunches over.
And it's the battle damage, man. Your brain can only get rocked inside the skull so many times in such a short amount of time before it starts to get loose.
Yep. And I think that Dan Hooker had rounds 1 and 2 in this. I think Dustin Poirier had rounds 3 and 4, although round 3 was very, very close because Dan Hooker did have that takedown.
Yep.
But I really do think that this fight was won in round 5, and I'm very, very curious to see what Dustin Poirier is going to do with hopefully his next title shot. at the end of Khabib Gaethje, who I think Khabib is going to win that fight, by the way.
I'm looking forward to the next few fights, man. And it's a segue, actually. Guys, we are going to start putting in our picks for these fights that are going to be coming up. So we'll have a fight preview of a couple of the main events and a couple of the bigger fights that are going on. We're not going to hit every prelim fight, it's just too much. But we're going to do a couple of picks per fight. So we're going to have a little preview of each fight, and then we're going to have our external next day analysis as well. So something really fun to look forward to. These picks will also be going on once we start the football season as well. So look forward to it. Stay tuned because we are going to be doing some really cool, fun stuff in the world of sports. Ain't that right, Dan?
Absolutely. And I made a lot of money on my picks last year. So I'm going to be sharing a couple picks with people, all of our followers, everybody that wants to subscribe and all that. I'm probably going to give you like one pick that I definitely know. I'm talking about like football season, even in the UFC. I'm going to narrow it down to one pick that I am definitely going to put some money on. So hopefully you guys can join me on that and we can win a little money this year.
Dan Smith, the locksmith, because his picks are a lock. Check it out. All right, man, we're gonna wrap up. This was really fun as always. Looking forward to the next one. Looking forward to watching more people beat the heck out of each other, and we get to talk about it.
Absolutely, man. It's awesome as always.
I love it. All right, guys. This is the Commotion. I'm Roshan Joshi here with Dan Smith on the Sports Den, and we are closing out our UFC Fight Night Poirier Hooker recap. If you like this video, make sure to hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, hit that subscribe button. And if you want to stay up to date with our content, hit that notification bell. And remember, guys, stay blessed.
Grinding my whole life.